sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. Today, I'm here to announce the introduction of federal legislation that is modeled after New Jersey's Jones Law. Specifically, the bill would, with no opportunity for early release, when someone commits what is referred to in the Federal Criminal Code as a serious violent felony, when it results in the death of a child under the age of 14. Let me be clear that this bill sets a minimum penalty of life in prison. It still enables federal prosecutors to seek the death penalty in all those cases where it is now permitted under federal law. I also want to point out that under the federal criminal justice system, life in prison means you die in prison. Due to reforms that were enacted back in 1984, there is no federal parole. There is no good time credit available to someone sentenced by a federal court to life in prison. It's also important to note that my legislation goes even further than New Jersey's Jones Law. Not only would someone who sexually abuses and kills a child be imprisoned for life, it covers, in addition, 15 other violent offenses where the commission of these crimes results in the death of a child under the age of 14. These violent crimes include sexual exploitation, carjacking, robbery, extortion, and arson. I recognize that most crimes, especially those committed against children, fall under the jurisdiction of state law and are not prosecuted in a federal court. It's my goal, however, not only to make Jones Law a federal statute, but to have it serve as a national model for other states to follow. As we stand here today, there are some 6,500 inmates locked away in state jails across the country for murdering a child. Not one of these criminals should ever be set free. No family, no matter where they live in the United States, should ever have to endure the double tragedy of first seeing their child killed through the heinous act of a violent criminal, and then watching that child's killer walk out of prison a free man. This legislation sends a clear signal that we will not tolerate the killing of innocent children. If you take the life of a child, whether intentionally or not, during the commission of another serious violent felony, you will either face the death penalty or spend the rest of your life behind bars. In 1994 alone, 1,894 children were murdered in the United States. 75% of those children who lost their lives to acts of violence were, like Joan, young children under the age of 8. When I return to Washington next week, I will be introducing this bill in the House of Representatives. It will serve as an enduring legacy to a happy, smiling little girl whose life was violently and tragically cut short when she stopped by a neighbor's house to deliver Girl Scout cookies. But it's also a tribute to her parents and to her whole family, to Rosemarie and to Frank, who have worked tirelessly to spare other families the nightmare that they've lived through for the last 24 years. And now I would like to introduce a truly extraordinary woman, one who has worked and works every day to protect all of America's children, Rosemarie D'Alessandro.
Thank you very much, Dr. I'm the best buddy. We have the best buddy. Hi, everybody. Let me see all your faces. Oh, boy. This is amazing. This is amazing. You know, I thank you, I welcome you, my family thanks you and welcomes you. But do you know what? Do you know why we're here today? Because we're working all together. I don't know how important you think you are. Boy, you are so important in getting this done today. That goes from the friend, it goes from the family, it goes to the media, it goes to the journalist, it goes to the advisor, it goes to the legislator, it goes to the, now we're even working with Washington DC. It goes to plain folk that says, gee, thank you, you're taking care of my child. You know, each one of these people is so important in reaching this goal today. I can't emphasize that because there's no way that I would have succeeded in getting what has been going on. I just can't emphasize it enough. It's in this unity that we have accomplished something that has nothing to do with revenge, but has to do with reasonable justice, has to do with being civilized, has to do with peace, a way to get justice in peaceful ways. So we all need to thank ourselves today, and we also need to thank God, whatever way you think of it, higher power, whatever, because that is how I know myself, how I was able to have tremendous strength, was through a lot of the spiritual part. But also, why we're here today is because of a little girl. And this little girl, I just want to tell you a little bit about her. And you can see some of her pictures. You can see from when she was a baby. She's very bubbly. They say like when a baby is 1 year old, you can tell a lot about their personalities. It was certainly true in Joan's case. You saw a very little bubbly little baby, very happy-go-lucky baby. And I think today, you know, it's not a sad day. It's a day that shows that her spirit is very bubbly and very upbeat and very happy, and that's Joan. And that's what Joan wants you to think of. And it's all right sometimes if you feel sad, and sometimes I might have a tear, you know, you're missing, whatever. But you know what? The important part is her spirit is so alive, and she doesn't want us to be like cynical and lose hope and be discouraged. She wants us to go all the way like we're doing today. And if I could just convey that spirit to you, because that's my daughter. I was very lucky to know her for 7.5 years. I was very, very lucky. I mean, I really knew true joy. I was so blessed. It was such perfect happiness. It was such perfect love. It was because of this love that made me, you know, work what I am doing. Her life has not been in vain. She's helping other children. The law is not going to help our family as far as appeals. We will always have that. But isn't it wonderful that there won't be appeals for families in the time to come? Now Joan's law, and then Joan's law going federal. And then isn't that tremendous? I mean, if this could grow, and we'll get into other states, and there, because, I mean, there are not only children in New Jersey, and thank God Governor Whitman signed the bill. I mean, this could be like a model state, and, you know, there are children all over. We want to take care of all of them in the United States. Now, as I was saying to you, this little girl who gave me such 7.5 years of happiness, I can't explain to you how lucky I was. Then, when she went to deliver her Girl Scout cookies on Holy Thursday, that was April 19th, I remember going down the street, and she had the ponytails bobbing, and she was all excited. because she had seen the car come in. Our neighbor is just right across the street. We just see his house, like from our house right here. And she saw his car, and she says, "Mom, the car just came in." And she had just previously delivered Girl Scout cookies with her sister. They only had a 4-block radius they could go to. And they were like going together, like in a pair. But it happened so fast. The car came in, she saw the car. They used to have boxes at that time where they used to carry little cookies, and there were only 2 more boxes left in that little carry box. And they only had 12 boxes all in all that they delivered anyway to the 4 people on the 4 blocks. And she went, she was so excited. I mean, that made her feel so important. That was Joan. I mean, Joan was funky. Joan was alive. Joan was a go-getter. Joan would, take that extra risk. Joan was full of life. So she was just going down the street. Well, I never saw her again after that, because our neighbor, who was a school teacher, and he was teaching juniors. I have a junior right here, a junior in high school. This is Michael. And what he did was, and he had no previous record, and he took her life. He assaulted her, he beat her, he strangled her, and he raped her, and he killed her twice because he thought she wasn't dead. She moved, and then he cracked her neck. This man, right now, will be trying again to appeal parole board decision in the fall. He has his own lawyer. He has his own lawyer. He has his own money to do this. We have to make sure that we keep this man in prison. This is true evil, and he would hurt other children. So what happened was, in the process of he became eligible, like, Bob was saying, he became eligible when I got that call, we found out about that. He was eligible a second time. The second time was different. There was going to be a big change in our lives because there was a good chance he could come out. There wasn't a fight put up. So I was very fortunate, my family was very fortunate, that we had some special people reach out to us. And that was Lou Costco, and that was Rose Heck, Assemblywoman Rose Heck and Senator Lou Costco. And with Sue Kozel, she did a tremendous amount of work to we had a vigil. And there were about 2,000 people here in Hillsdale. And at that time, I remember we had green ribbon campaigns, we had petitions going, we had about 30,000 petitions, we had letters. And we had a group of supporters and friends, a lot of times behind the scenes, but the true heroes being my right hand and my left hand. And they're still with us today. And some of them are here today, and some of them will be speaking. Now, in the process, he did have a term decision, and he did give term for 20 years. And thank God for the legislators that helped us to achieve this. And it was at that point I realized that families should not have to go through appeals like we would have to go through. Because you see, that never puts closure. Every time an appeal comes, there's no closure. And there could be closure in between time, but then you get the appeal and the boom again. So we started, and it was 3 years it took. That started in May of 94. McGowan got his term on April 18th of 1994. And it's ironical, it's something, Joan's anniversary is April 19th. And so it took 3 years with tremendous work. So many people from my community, astronomical, friends, legislators, media, I don't know, everybody just working, petitions, green ribbons. Now, the green ribbon right now that we all have is, say, to remember Joan today so tomorrow's children will be safe. And that's what the green ribbon is, about. Green was Joan's favorite color. She loved nature. And so in this 3-year process, amazing things happened. It took time. It did take perseverance. It took prayer. It took a lot of work together. It was such fulfillment working with so many people. You might say, well, how could she feel fulfilled? Yes, it's true living. It's true living because you're working for something positive and you're seeing so much good in so many people. And there is a lot of good. There is. You know, sometimes we don't think like, you know, we're doing good enough, we're good enough, we're not perfect enough. But just remember about yourselves. I mean, all the people here, you know, you're just good people. That's a lot of people. And you know what we could do without good? We go out and we make more good, right? And that good gets more good. And you know what? We will conquer evil. We will conquer evil with this attitude, and that's why we're doing it. We are conquering evil. So we're stronger than an evil person like McGowan. So anyway, the astronomical day came on April 3rd, and April 3rd, her bill was signed by Governor Whitman. And on that day, we can say that we were pretty joyful. And there were many of my friends that were there, and many people that I'm seeing here that were there. Wasn't it a great day? Wasn't that amazing, Pat? Wasn't that a great day? And the sun was shining beautiful. Remember, so it was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And it was like so happy. And I remember that was the first time I met Governor Whitman. And I saw a mother, you know, that cared. And I liked that because I liked the way she was with my boys. And I met other people that I had never met before. So it was a true joy to be alive, to be inspired by my daughter, to have my daughter's spirit very alive there that day. So then, you know, I reached out to many people in Washington. It didn't matter if you were Republican, Democrat, taking care of children. I mean, this is a universal subject. And I reached out, and I remember this one person. He's right over here. He's hiding a little bit. He's right here. It's not right. He's hiding. He shouldn't be hiding. He shouldn't be hiding. And then I remember we went to a symposium, right, Frank? And that was in October '96. And it was all on children's issues. And I was glad because Michael Carlin told me about the symposium. I would never have met Bob Franks. I never would have known he was into all the children's issues. And it had to do with abuse for children. It had to do with exploitation. It had to do with the missing and exploited children. In fact, we have a representative here from that organization here today. And I said, let me reach out to him. And he was one of the people that reached out. The others, whatever agenda they had, they did not reach, but he reached out. And here we are today, starting to talk about Jones Law getting federal. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I mean it. I mean it from my heart. Because I'm working with a good person that trusts, that's honest, that really cares. They're all legislators that are like an example, for the goodness, in like in politics. I mean, politics is not a dirty word, It's not a dirty word. So here we are, and as Bob spoke to you about it, I really don't need to go into too much about that. Do you think, Bob? And then, you know, if you have different questions, you know, concerning it, you know, I could work on that. But, thank you, everybody. I will say a prayer for each of you. You're all beautiful, making Joan very happy. I think she will, that green ribbon will be a sign of hope for you, a sign of spirit for you. You know, sometimes you get down, just look at that green ribbon, I remember that's a sign of hope. And, you know, you're helping children. So, what I'd like to do is, before I introduce my family, I know our mayor has to leave soon, so how about you coming over, Tim, say something, so this way you could go do your business over there, or else it's going to get too hard.
I'm sorry, some of us have to leave for our 12 o'clock news desk. Can we ask you a quick question?
Sure.
What will bring closure for you?
Closure? Oh, there is closure. I have closure. You know? The only thing that you don't, when you don't get closure, is when the appeals come up. I have closure. I mean, here it is, you know, you're doing something to make society better. You're living, you have a full life. I have, you know, children, I have family. I had closure, I would say, after about 2 years, you know, going through the grieving process. First 3 months were the hardest. I can't explain it to you, but I do. I do.
Where do you get the strength to do this?
I get the strength by not just thinking about myself. Doesn't mean I don't think about myself. I have to think about myself in order, you know, I have, for instance, health problems, in order to be able to have the energy, you know, to help others. I think it's very, very, such happiness, you know, to help others. And I really have spiritual, you know, I really, you know, God's helped me tremendously, and it really started with my daughter, too. And it always, she's there, she's alive. And she wouldn't want me to be this depressed and introverted mother and so forth. I wouldn't do that. And I also would not let McGowan, I would never let him control me. He controlled one child, he controlled my child. I'd never let him control. So there's lots of parts where I get my strength, you know. And then I'm not afraid to cry or show pain. That doesn't mean the end of the world. You know, it's 2 minutes, so then go to the next. You know, I'm a human being. And that's it. And now I would like to introduce our mayor, Tim O'Reilly. And he's helped me. He, you know, he did in April, he proclaimed April Joan's month this year. You know, because Joan died in April, and we also had a signing of the bill in April, and that really made me feel good too.
The importance of this legislative initiative is more for the children around the whole world rather than just here in Hillsdale. There's children in California, there's children in Texas, and there's children in Michigan that have the same innocence stolen away from them by this heinous crime. The Girl Scouts as an organization no longer has door-to-door cookie sales. You're only supposed to sell within your family. The same with Boy Scouts, the same with all the other youth groups. So this crime affects everyone. I was 15 at the time this happened, and it's as vivid today as it was then. And I think that for us in Hillsdale and for all the people that experienced this in other cases around the world, it's relived every time this is in the paper or that it's brought up, that parole is allowed or is opportunities there, that you know, what would happen, and we don't know. And I think once trust is violated, I think then it's up to our legislative people to make sure that we can feel safe, and that speaks to our constitutional right for freedom. Thank you.
Rosemary touched on the fact that there were literally thousands of people who put their shoulders collectively to the wheel to make certain that Jones Law became a reality in Trenton. But certainly the two legislators that she singled out, those people who sponsored the bill and worked tirelessly until it was enacted, deserve our special credit. And I'm thankful for them for pioneering the way in this very, very important issue. First, I'd like to recognize my friend, State Senator Lou Costa.
Thank you very much. It was very exciting for me to see that our New Jersey Congressman Bob Franks took this legislation and started to move it on the federal level. And this is another indication of what has happened here in our great state of New Jersey with legislation that has been sponsored here in the state of New Jersey, sponsored by myself and Assemblywoman Rose Heck, and taken to the next level and used as model legislation to protect the people throughout the United States of America. We did it, we accomplished it with Megan's Law, which we sponsored, got it through the legislation, the governor signed it, and that became federal law. We did it with the three strikes legislation to make sure that people wouldn't continue to commit crimes. And the federal government took that legislation, and now we're going to take Jones Law and move it through the federal level. We've taken the initiative to, when we first started to sponsor this legislation, and when our Governor Christie Whitman signed it into law, we took copies of that legislation and we sent it to every single governor throughout the state. And I have responses from many of the governors who are going to take it upon themselves to put this legislation through in their own communities, in their own states, and continue this legislation nationwide. The federal legislation will help us from that end. Each and every state in the union, my goal is to have this legislation passed in each and every state of the union to show that not only New Jersey has zero tolerance for this type of a crime or any type of a crime, but the country has zero tolerance. And that's what we're shooting for. We have zero tolerance. We don't expect people to commit these types of crimes, and when they do, it's not going to go unpunished. The New Jersey law says very specifically that if a person that commits this type of a crime does not receive the death penalty.
Before we spoke, I have a daughter, Joanna, who's a Girl Scout who had a gold award who sold cookies. Being in law enforcement, I was aware of this tragedy. And I would always watch my daughter a little closer. We often learn from tragedies of others, uncontrollable tragedies. Then we get to Michael, who's going to Boise State, and my son went to Boise State. Just so happens I wore a green suit today. I had no idea that green was the color. Driving up on a turnpike, I just thought of how wonderful this is, that the citizens have a right to speak. They can propose legislation, then it's up to the legislators to debate it. And I think that we in New Jersey, and now with Congressman Franks and his eloquence, I think that maybe the name of Joan will become known nationwide. And rather than commenting on a law, I'd like to thank you very much for just inviting me up here.
It's been mentioned before, but someone else who was, when he served in the legislature in Trenton, worked on the behalf of children and their interests across this state, and now as Bergen County executive has taken that focus right here into Bergen County. Somebody who's been a friend of the D'Alessandros and a friend of the legislators in this district and throughout this county, Bergen County Executive Pat Schuver.
Thanks very much. I want to also thank Rosemary for the kind opportunity to be here today on this very, very special day. To offer my support and the support of the people of Bergen County to my good friend Bob Franks, who I've had the pleasure to serve with in the legislature in the past. Bob is a superb legislator, a true leader, a true person who has compassion and caring as his bywords, and you can see that by his discussion today. And I have no doubt in my mind that this proposal, this bill, is going to become law around the nation. And the idea that started with my good friends Lou and Rose here will then become national law. And we will, as the people of Bergen County, work with you to make sure that that happens. To the D'Alessandro family, I want to, on behalf of the people of Bergen County, indicate to you what extraordinary people you are. what people of great courage, that you will always have our support, but beyond our support, you will always have our love and our compassion. Will always be there to stand with you on any time that you need us to make sure that these things happen. Lou, and I can't let drop this one concept, which is that I've seen not only with the D'Alessandro family, but poignantly with other families in Bergen County. I think of the Vodos in Lodi in the Trentino matter, which is, although a different type of case, it brings about the same principle. When you have such a heinous crime committed as was done here in Hillsdale, or the Vodo, or the shooting of the two officers on Route 46 so many, many years ago, that is one terrible, terrible violation, not only of those individuals' lives and of these wonderful families, but the violation continues. Because if in fact, as a result of whatever the sentencing is, those individuals are sentenced in a way that allows them to be paroled at various periods of time in their sentence, then these families, individuality and their dignity is violated each time that matter comes up for the parole board. They have to relive all of this all over again, never knowing whether the individual's ever going to stay in jail, or because he happens to write a book or become the darling of some aspect of society that people will forget, and they'll be released on the streets again. We can't let that happen. These are heinous crimes. These are monsters. There are monsters that live among us. There are. And we must make sure they never see the light of day, and that's what Bob Franks is going to be doing here, and that's what Lou and Rose have done for the state of New Jersey. And to all the individuals here I know from the various communities, in particular Hillsdale, who have volunteered to work on this over the course of time, you worked very hard, and you have succeeded. And although it is beyond our moral power to bring Joan back, we have some very, very concrete things in her name and in her spirit that will prevent this from happening for others. So thank you all. Next we have Bergen County Prosecutor Bill Schmidt with us today. Bill?
Good morning. I consider it very fortunate that within days after being sworn in as the Bergen County Prosecutor, I was invited to attend the bill signing of Jones Law with the Governor, the Attorney General, and to meet the D'Alessandro family. I've had the occasion several times now to speak with Mrs. D'Alessandro, and let me again assure you that anything that my office can do to assist you as this process continues, we will be there for you. I look back at the days when I was an assistant prosecutor, when I left the office back in 1984. There was one victim witness person to assist the victims of crime. Today we have an office filled with trained professionals whose sole mission is to work with victims, to work with witnesses, to take what they've suffered, what they're going through, and assist them as they go through a process that is unfamiliar to them. It's particularly important to me that I met the D'Alessandro family as early in my career, returning back as county prosecutor, because it strengthened with me the importance of the victims in everything that we do. I'm very pleased to be here and to be asked to appear by Congressman Franks. I thank him for the introduction of his legislation. In Bergen County, the prosecutor's office and all law enforcement in Bergen County, as in all the counties in the state, work very closely with federal law enforcement. Very often, the federal offense may be easier to prove, have evidential rules that may be more favorable to the government's position, may have longer sentences. And in those instances, we do defer to the federal prosecutions. Here we have the assurance now that there will be a law very similar to what we have in New Jersey presently that will only add to the tools available, the weapons in the arsenal of law enforcement to see that justice is done. I thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today, and I wish you all the best, and please call on me, call on my office, call on my victim witness unit anytime you need anything as you go through the parole process. Thank you.
I'd also like to introduce Joeen Chinella, who is the representative from Congresswoman Marge Rockama's staff. Marge is going to be sponsoring this bill with me in the House of Representatives. I've spoken to her about it in Washington. She plans to aggressively be supportive of its enactment, and I want to thank her for her full support. Joeen?
Rosemary, I know that you and Marge spoke at length, and please know that she is there at any time for you, and certainly our office is there any time for you. Don't hesitate to call.
My compassion goes out to her too, because she told me that she lost her kid at 17, and I have a 17-year-old. You know, so
Yeah, that's right.
it was really, and it was very special. It was very comfortable, you know, talking to her.
And as Congressman Franks just said, Marge is an original co-sponsor of this legislation. I just have a brief statement from her to read. I am pleased to join this effort as an original co-sponsor of a federal Jones law, and I will work hard with Congressman Franks to enact this legislation mandating a prison term of life without parole for a person who causes the death of a child in the commission of a serious crime. For these felons, the jailhouse door should be one way. We have the responsibility to protect the most vulnerable people in our society, our children. New Jersey has led the way. Now Congress must take the next step in our federal efforts to strengthen crime deterrence and to protect America's children. The purpose of life without parole is twofold. First, someone who kills a child does not deserve to ever set foot outside a prison again, ever. Secondly, it relives the families of these innocent victims of having to relive the horror of their child's murder every few years at parole hearings. These families have already lived through the original incident and relived it during the killer's trial. They should not be forced to relive it again and again to keep the killer of their children in prison. I would like to commend Joan's mother, Rosemary D'Alessandro, for her untiring efforts to keep unspeakable crime before the people of northern New Jersey. It is her valiant way to attempt to prevent other families from suffering as her family has suffered over these long years. She deserves our deep thanks and our firm support.
We have with us as well John Bossany, who is the volunteer chairman for the New Jersey chapter for the Missing and Exploited Children. John?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd just like to thank Congressman Franks and the D'Alessandro family for having me here. I'm in very good company. We're very proud of Joan's bill at the National Center for the Missing Children in Virginia. And recently speaking with John Walsh in Washington, we're glad to see that someone's taking the initiative to take the bill to a federal level. We need something to control these predators and pedophiles, if you will, in all 50 states, to have a uniform law, to have a model law where it does work everywhere. And we as parents look forward to helping Congressman Franks and the D'Alessandro family. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for their time, and Rosemary and I are going to be working on a project. I work for a large food concern in New Jersey, and I'm going to try to pull my company into the children's issue with the Food Marketing Institute in Washington. And I just hope that this will go well. And I'm sure it will with Rosemary's help and Congressman Franks. Again, thank you.
I'd also like to introduce the Chief of Police here in Hillsdale, Frank Mikulski, who is with us today. Chief?
Thank you, Congressman. As one of two remaining officers who were present on that tragic day, it's a memory that never fades, regardless of your involvement at the time. I too remember the summer of '93, when Ms. D'Alessandro received word and police department became alerted that petitions were going to circulate and that we were going to plan a Jones Vigil. And I remember that night, it was a wonderful night. It was my first event as a brand new chief of police, and I thought it was the first step in something that just had to be. And the following week, Rosemary called me on the phone and she said, "Wasn't that a wonderful evening?" And I said, "Yes, it's a good start." And she said, "Well, now we have to move forward." And only very briefly mentioned that the concern for the agony and suffering of our own family, and immediately went into the concept of, we must protect the other children. We have to protect the other families from suffering what we've suffered through. And of course, on April the 3rd, when Governor Whitman signed Jones' law, we had a great day. That was a great day.
You got a picture, right?
And then the following week, Rosemary calls again, and she says, "Frank, wasn't that a wonderful day?" I said, "Yes, it was wonderful." She says, "Now we have more work to do." And of course, when we look around and see the highest level of dignitary who have pledged their support and their efforts, Congressman, and have actually joined the expanding D'Alessandro family, soon we have another great day.
Thank you.
Let me say that we also have we have representatives here from Senator Cardinale's office, from the Office of Sheriff Terhune. We have the Union County Prosecutor's Office represented here, and I'm grateful for that. We have a whole host of other supporters and Rosemary's friends who are here. But in order to get to the press, yeah, anybody else in the family would like?
I was just going to.
Go ahead. Absolutely.
First of all, I just wanted to say that Senator Lukasco was getting letters from governors from the United States because he shared the signing of Joe's law with all the governors. Okay, this is what he did. I never asked him to do it. He just did it. And he got letters from Mississippi, from Colorado, from California, from Delaware, and what was the other one I'm forgetting?
I can remember all of them.
Yeah, there was so many. Isn't that great? Yay! I mean, that was really a true breath of fresh air. And also, I wanted to mention with the chief, you know what he would always say to me? He would say, "The squeaky wheel gets the most oil." You know, those were encouraging words, and I like the way he would say it to me. So, thanks, Chief. Okay. Now, I'd like to introduce members of my family, and then there were some of the supporters. I'd like to also say some words. And I start with my son, Michael. Michael is 17 years old. He's a junior at Pascack Valley High School. I tell you, he makes my life very interesting. I never have a dull day with him. And you know what? He also has tremendous compassion. And he's really, I mean, we have, what can I say, the greatest relationship, even though we could be, at one time like this, we could be like this together because we both were, but yet after that we could laugh and say, "Gee, boy, now we both calmed down." So it's just that kind of relationship that is the greatest. I'm so glad to have Michael. So Michael has some words to say, and he was, like we were saying, he was in Boise State a couple of weeks ago. That made me very proud too. Okay. And he has his friends here. He has some of his friends here, and they've supported him. There's Dave right over here. There's Brian over here. Brian is a linebacker, so watch out for him. Dave is a great runner, and then they would say, "Oh, gee, I saw you on TV. I saw you in the commercial." So I mean, so Michael isn't getting forgotten, you know what I mean? I love it. Thanks, friends, okay? And here's Michael.
I just think it's great that this bill has a chance to affect the whole country that started in New Jersey, and I'd like to thank Congressman Franks for starting the process of every state having a model of what we have in New Jersey, Jones Bill, so that every kid can be protected by it.
Now I'd like to introduce my youngest, my independent child there, John, who wants to be a sportscaster someday. You talk to him about sports right now, and boy, oh boy, he's gotten me interested in sports. And now I will watch basketball and baseball, and we'll talk about things, and we'll have such a wonderful relationship. John is a hardest worker, easygoing, just happy-go-lucky. He has one of his friends here. Bill is over there. And thank God for Bill, because Bill has always been there for John, and John for Bill. He's 15 years old. He was just 15 on June 18th, and just finished freshman year. I'm very lucky to have John. I could ask him something. John, what do you think about this? How does this sound? And he'll always give me his analyzation with such sense. Thanks, John. And I'd like to, John, want to say a few words.
Well, I think the bill is great because it will keep other families from going through the same pain that we had to go through, and it will keep my sister's memory alive many years after her death. Thank you.
And now, just short and simple, Frank Jones' father. Jones.
I got the message, I'll keep it short. First, welcome you all here, belated welcome. I appreciate you all coming, and we certainly appreciate all the support from everybody, from Congressmen, to our Assembly people, and Senator, and law enforcement, and everybody else that's here. It's great to have all that support. And with that support, there's no doubt in my mind that the law will progress to the federal level and hopefully around the other 49 states. New Jersey will be the leader in that. Plus, credit for all of that goes to Rosemary, who's the inspiration and the work behind it all and making it all happen. There's a lot of help, but it's got to be a leader, and she certainly is that. So thank you all again, and appreciate all your help.
Okay, now I'm going to ask some of my friends to speak. There are just so many. So I was thinking, we were kind of having a conversation about it, and I figured maybe start with Barbara. Barbara has helped me with all the food over there, and I hope you're enjoying it. And Barbara, I have to tell you, was at St. John Baptist when Joan was at St. John Baptist. Joan was in 2nd grade and Barbara was in 7th grade. In 6th grade. Okay. So here you go. She could tell you a little bit from, this peer level, okay? Barbara, with all my love.
I can remember that the whole entire situation happening, like Timmy said very vividly, especially being that we were, kids in school, in a small school, in a small community, and for that to have happened, it just didn't happen in Hillsdale. And when it took place, it really affected a lot of us. And when I saw the Community Life 20 years later with his face on the cover, and this was reopening, it just, you have no choice but to, you can't take a back seat in something like this. You have to really support Rosemary and her family with trying to prevent him from ever walking the streets, because he can't be out there. And there's so many like him. So I am a big letter writer. I'm not usually around. I'm not, you know, I have like 4 jobs, so I'm never really at the events. But I do get my letters going.
She does tremendous.
And being I know a lot of people, I get a lot of signatures too. So whatever the next project is, it will be there for you. And that's it, right? My phone friend.
Now, I'm kind of taking it chronologically, and I'd like Roy to speak, and Roy and Lois are like a family. And Roy has kids similar to our kids' ages. They have older kids, like 2 families in one, and they have younger kids. And I don't know, they're always there. They're always there for us. And he took off today to come here. Not easy. With Bell Atlantic, right? So, Roy, with all my heart, I'm going to ask you to speak. And thank you very much. And thank you, Lois, too, from all of us.
Bless you. Well, basically, our first association with the D'Alessandros was that night when we searched through the woods, in ponds, back porches, through swamp, trying to find any sign of Joan, praying that we would not find her, having children at home, just having that thought just go through your mind. Hoping that she would be found safe and we would be called back and we'd know that she was safe in her bed, but no, that was not to be. Years later we moved just back over here, right, in the backyard, and became neighbors. I got to know them much better. We shared similar lifestyles, older children, as you mentioned, youngers. First, they'd have a boy, we'd have a boy, they'd have another boy, we had another boy. Finally, we called a truce. Both good church-going families, very involved. And through the years, Joan's ageless memory was kept alive, and all our children and the whole town grew up learning about Joan and got to know her so much better. Then came the parole hearings and the realization that McGowan could possibly be free to hurt again. No one should suffer the pain that they suffered. As Bob Grenner, a radio personality in the area, has mentioned, an individual like this serves notice on society that he does not want to be a part of it and should not be allowed out for that reason. He served notice in for keeps. But the D'Alessandro's dedication was to prevent this from happening to another family. The dedication that you all have had through all these tough years, to follow through with your hopes and desires, and all these people that have pledged themselves to support this. We were asked to help with petitions, flyers. My wife and I one night, we tied thousands of feet of ribbon around poles and trees, anything that was vertical, just so the green would be in the town for the vigil that was to come.
In the snow, right?
Oh, yeah, it was a riot. Some of the trees we had to, the two of us had to run ribbon around and wait for my wife to get around the other side so we could tie the bow. I'll tell you, I was glad to see the end of that ribbon. But
that was in January, a very snowy winter.
Yes, yes, and we were just touched to be part of it. And the candlelight vigil was the most touching part. When Frank and Joan spoke, Rosemarie spoke of Joan, from my vantage point, there was a big full moon right over your shoulders, as if, Joan, were looking down on you. And it was just a beautiful sight to see. Frank and Rosemarie have worked tirelessly toward this bill signing, and knowing that this could be a way of stopping further pain for other families is what their motivation is. They're not vengeful people. They know this will not help them. They still have to face these parole hearings. And we're just proud, my wife and I, and all the citizens of this town, are proud and privileged to have been a part of this. And we have grown very close to the D'Alessandros. And to be part of their lives is really a fortunate thing. And as Mother Teresa has said, one of the most precious possessions that we're given are our children, and it's our responsibility to protect them.
Terry, where are you? Terry? This is my friend Terry. She was there for me. My mom, when my mom passed away last year, she was always there for me. We have so much in common.
I really didn't prepare to say anything. I just want to say, speaking as a mother, I relate to Rosemary so strongly. I think the greatest fear that all of us has is the possibility that anything could ever conceivably happen to our children. I met her through my son, and so I identify with her mothering, and I would just say she represents all women who have children. And for that, it's insurmountable to me to even imagine what she's gone through. But she's a source of strength to all of us, and I thank her, and I'm glad to be her friend. Thanks, Ralph.